We continue now with virtue of trust and the chapter on trust in our helplessness. And behold, the little one become for the time being strong with all the strength of his father. Happy privilege of childhood, which owes to its helplessness that being so quickly and so effectually rescued. Irresistible the power of a simple look from a child, which no father's heart here below can withstand. How could the good God withstand it? He who has created all hearts of fathers on the model of his own. A child has instructive and enduring knowledge of his personal helplessness and of the loving strength of his father and his mother. This is precisely what is needed of ourselves. Thereupon, no longer permitting itself to be downcast at the magnitude of its difficulties, our trust will be exalted, if need be, to the point of heroism. For the fact is that what we ourselves are unable to do, our Father in heaven is compelled by his paternal goodness to do for us. At this propitious moment, we remind ourselves that God is very near us, that already he is bent over his child to give it his help. When it beholds us sunk into the lowest depth of our helplessness, when it sees us disillusioned and deprived of all human support, divine goodness stretches out to us the arms of its infinite compassion. It is for us to reply by throwing ourselves into its arms with loving resignation. Pure trust's hour has struck. The hour of divine marvels is at hand. The Lord is about to magnify his name and to display his power and his love. In a moment of time, he can perform miracles. For him, time does not count. He can enable the soul to make extraordinary progress in an incredibly short time. To it, he is ready to accord notable graces, so only that the mediocrity of our trust does not set limits to his generosity. Louis of Granada makes happy allusion to those circumstances in which our helplessness is most plainly revealed. Providence reserves to itself the resolution by itself of those extraordinary difficulties that life presents, while it leaves to nature the duty of solving ordinary difficulties. The saints were profoundly convinced of this truth. In this lies the secret of their imperturbable trust. Let us seek to imitate them. Were we to have a lively sense of our helplessness, though difficulties seem to have accumulated in an extraordinary fashion, bringing us to conviction that we shall never attain holiness, we can then be assured, if only in utter trust we have recourse to God, that the hour of miraculous intervention is at hand. In him let our hope be placed. Let this hope be a firm hope, the more so as happily we are no longer able to place hope in ourselves. But a few years ago, to a soul whom he had chosen to be his secretary of love, and to publish abroad his marvelous goodness, our Lord said these comforting words, "My Benigni, unless you give me the key of your will, I cannot make you holy. Yet, if only you give it to me, I can make you not only a saint, but a great saint. In a moment of time I can atone for a soul's whole past, if only that soul treats me as God indeed, if only that soul does not limit my goodness by its own distrust, does not cramp my mercy by its own agony, does not measure my love by its own." Again, to prove how much he desired to give us his great graces of satisfaction, Jesus said to her, "Often I am as if oppressed by the graces which return to me, because men are not willing to receive them. Consequently, when I meet with a soul that leaves me free to bless it with these graces, my heart is relieved thereby." Who are the souls which bring solace to the heart of Jesus, and which he can possess as his heart desires? They are those generous souls whose fervent desire is to achieve holiness and who, aware of their utter helplessness, put all their hope in him. I, too, can be of the number of those souls. In me, the sense of my helplessness is not lacking. Let us ask Jesus to combine this with pure trust in him, for trust, no less than humility, depends upon God far more than upon my own efforts. Every argument known to man, every proof most calculated to convince him of the divine mercy, will fail to give me trust if God does not implant in my soul that holy supernatural virtue. How essential it is that I ask it of him often, for then I too shall become one of those amiable souls of whom Jesus has said, "The souls who have trust in me are the thieves of my grace." Complete self-forgetfulness at certain junctures the sole means of making peace our own. When our spiritual indigence is at its worst, it often befalls that we are unable wholly to recover that joyous, tranquil peace which we need. In vain, piling reason on reason, we recall all the arguments for trust. In vain we beseech the Lord to help us. He seems to turn a deaf ear, and to abandon us to our desolate sadness. Nevertheless, our trust is real, though it has withdrawn itself into the most secret places of our soul. Thither it seems to have fled for sanctuary, as to a safe rock in the midst of tempests. In such a case, it is good to combine with our unconscious trust another valuable recourse. We need to turn our eyes from that tiny speck of dust which we are. We need to forget the self, to lose it from sight, that we may fix all our attention and all our love upon God's infinite lovableness. This insignificant creature that we are is of no account. It is certain that our desires are holy desires. That we may better please God, we would ourselves grow better. Yet, nevertheless, of what importance is this paltry being, lost in the immensity of the universe? God has no need of my petty homage for his felicity's sake. Whatever I do, he is infinite and unchanging felicity. This is surely sufficient for my own happiness. So only he be happy, so only he be God, making discovery in himself, in his triune person, of all joy and all love. What matters the rest? As for me, if I cannot love him as my heart dictates, I would at least love him, but none but him with all my poor love. I would behold none but him, would bless none but him, would admire none but him. In him I would put all my happiness and all my joy. Blessed indeed is that soul which is absorbed in God, which thus forgets the soul in loving contemplation of God's perfections. Despite all its misery and its spiritual indigence, such a soul has won at last to utter peace. It has faithfully followed that excellent counsel of the Savior to his servant Benigni Consolata, "Lose not another moment in taking thought of yourself, whether it concern your soul or your body. You have a spouse, who in these things takes thought for you. As for you, think only of loving to the limit of love. The soul is indeed lost, yet it remains in God's keeping. It no longer thinks of itself, yet God thinks of it with all the supreme delicacy of love. He, infinite charity, will not be surpassed in generosity by his insignificant creature." A certain noble soul, skilled in this blessed self-forgetfulness, once wrote thus pertinently, "My suffering is not my own concern, but his. My concern is to be wholly occupied in him. When either melancholy or pain troubles my soul, at once I flee to him as to a sanctuary. It is surely true that to know unchanging peace we must walk this earth, asking for no support from it, putting out into it no roots, content to lean on God alone. Find all your need in Him. Have no need that lies outside Him. Surely here is the secret of happiness. Often I have been unsettled of soul. Life has seemed a vanity and the earth a void. Then I would reflect, He is there, my Father, my God, my guide, my Jesus, infinite love Himself. At once my path would be made plain before me. It was to do His will, helped by His omnipotent power, made strong in His infinite love. Straightway life seemed no longer a vanity, nor the earth a void, for my concern is with God, who fills all the earth with His living love. Chapter 20. God's love works unwearyingly to achieve our holiness. God's unitive love for me. God is so great, so mighty, so exalted above ourselves, His pygmy creatures, who born of nothingness are in ourselves little more than nothing. All of us have difficulty, especially in the beginning, in realizing God's love even in the slightest degree, whereas of His other perfections we have some conception. We know that He loves us. We have had repeatedly impressed upon us that He loves us immensely. Yet, of the particular kind of love with which He loves us, at our initiation into the spiritual life, we have but little idea. Christians generally imagine that God loves us with that love which alone can be expected from the infinitely great to the infinitely insignificant, with a compassionate and benevolent love toward such poor beggars as we are, a widely diffused love that in some vague way embraces all men. Even the greatest benefits conferred by God's love have this interpretation put upon them. The passion, that supreme manifestation of the divine charity, for them is no more than the compassionate love of an infinitely good God, desirous once and for all of saving the human race from dreadful damnation. The spiritual life must be followed for some time if we are to understand that God's love is a love that concerns me personally, which concerns each of us. We need to have heard God's voice in our secret heart, to have conversed with Him somewhat familiarly, to have relished the joy that comes of love's intimacy, that we may realize that it is indeed me whom God loves, that it is for me that Jesus died, that in me in particular He's interested, that of me He thinks continuously, and that it is my love that He desires. And still later, we begin to perceive that God loves each of us in particular, not only with a compassionate, benevolent love, nor even with a frank love of friendship, but with that most perfect love of all, that love which is pure love. He loves me with an immense love, and is fascinated by my soul. His desire, that desire to fulfill which He works unweariedly and secretly, is ultimate and perfect union with Himself, that ideal union of the beatific vision, and also upon this earth, the union which is sanctity. The unitive love of God, who infinitely great and infinitely perfect, desires and seeks unwearyingly a union of His insignificant and pitiable creature with Himself. Here is the great truth around which all our life gravitates. It is a great mystery. It is a mystery as strange as it is great, that infinitely surpasses and wholly dazzles our little human intelligence, much as the too bright glare of the sun dazzles the unaccustomed eyes of night birds. That God in His goodness is interested in His insignificant creatures, that He takes delight in His handiwork, that He is vigilant for our well-being, that in countless and diverse gifts He displays the benevolent love which He has for us, this is easily comprehensible. Yet that He who is infinite perfection loves us with the greatest and most perfect love which exists, that he is vigilant for our union with him, the union of infinite beauty with our extreme repulsiveness, of infinite holiness with such divine things as we are, of infinite grandeur with our utter insignificance. This is beyond all our earthly imaginings. Love always presupposes a certain equality, a certain proportion existing between those who love. God and his creature are surely different in kind as well as in degree. Nevertheless, this marvelous, this incredible, this paradoxical state of affairs is true. God loves me. Not only is it his will to make me the countless gifts which love prompts, in particular, it is his will to give himself to me as much as is possible in this life and perfectly in the life to come. Love is a spendthrift of itself. God, who is utter love, wishes to commune with us, to make us gift of himself. If to effect this he needs to give us a share in his own divine nature, then unhesitatingly he will do it. Love either finds or, failing to find, invents its like. Finding only disproportion and obstacles to union between himself and us, God will render us like to himself, that the union may be made perfect. That is the sublime lot to which God has called us. Holiness in this life, eternal beatitude in the other. Stated in more precise terms, these imply upon earth intimate union with God, and in heaven perfect union between him and us. The union of the atom and of the all, of the infinitely great and the infinitely little. This is the impossible masterpiece conceived of his love, the apparent impossibility of which makes manifest to us in a measure the infinity of divine love. Let us keep our amazement within bounds. Infinite love must surely vastly surpass our poor human comprehension. Between the divine love and any love known to creation, there can be no comparison. Much less can there be found on this earth any rival to it. God is love. Deus caritas est, says St. John. Eternally and essentially love, utterly and eminently, he shares his nature with the Son. Yet it is his will also to make gift of himself outside himself. As nothing existed to which he could give himself, he gave creatures the breath of life. He created man, and exalted him to the supernatural order. Me also he created and kept me in being by an ever-renewing creation. He filled me with his grace and demanded of me my heart and my love, since it is his will to make gift of himself. While to make this possible, I also must make gift of myself. Our whole life is a drama of love. It is divine love desirous of giving itself to me, of uniting me ineffably with that love, and begging, striving, and searching by one means after another for the love of its utterly paltry creature. This is life. This is the supreme end God had in view when he created me. His every gift is equally unitive. Equally it is the object of each of his gifts. Possibly hitherto I've been able to see in the innumerable boons conferred upon me by God merely the tokens of a kingly liberality, or of a friend's great love. My body, my soul, with its fine instincts, in particular the grace which illumines it, the countless creatures which surround me, the gift of pious parents and the boon of a Christian education, the call to the sacerdotal and religious state, all these, most probably, have seemed to me as so many gifts of that great friend and benefactor, God himself. Yet these gifts, seen in their true light, are infinitely more touching. They are the gifts of God's unitive love. They are presents set with rare pearls and with diamonds, which he ceaselessly makes that he may gradually win my heart, may make complete conquest of it, not merely as a friend wins his friend's heart, but with perfect union as his end in view, to bind it with the shackles of his unitive love, that incomparable love, in contrast with which the love of earth's married lovers is no more than a pale and profane image. I will espouse thee to me in faith. What gifts, what presents his pure love makes us! In the first place, there are those countless gifts of a material kind. The whole universe is a gift which he has made to me. It is for me that he has created the universe. All the creatures which surround me are his thoughts, created by his thoughts out of love for me, that they may express and enchant his love. The flowers which delight me, in their array more beautiful than King Solomon in his glory, the fruit whose delectable taste is a joy to me, the animals which give me their comradeship or bear my burdens for me, all utter his loving goodness. For with every new moment, all these are thought and created by my beloved, that he may manifest his love and win my heart for himself. The very sun itself, in all its vastness, which gives light and life to all things, is created for me and for my happiness, to say nothing of those millions of suns, the stars. The whole of this magnificent and constantly renewed creation, this enchanted universe that is at each new moment thought and created by God, is the work of the love of God, who himself, infinitely great, has a strange desire for the love of his insignificant creature. What fascination there is in this thought! Out of love for me, ceaselessly, he creates out of the void, as with the magic wand of a fairy, all this material world of which I am a part. Moreover, gifts of the supernatural order have still greater loveliness, are indeed ineffable. For my salvation's sake, that I, even I, might be saved from hell, he made himself man for me. Himself eternal, he took a beginning, pure and impassible spirit, he subjected himself to the flesh and its ills. Infinitely great, he assumed the shape of a tiny child. For me, he lived a life of suffering and of unselfishness that has never been paralleled. For me, he died upon Calvary, that to me he might prove the immensity of his love, and that he might compel me to love him truly in all things. The drama of the cross was a desperate device to make me believe in his love, to subjugate and to conquer me. It would seem that love could not go further. Yet, no, his love is not limited by human impossibility. He rose again, forever surrendered to his desire to manifest his love for men. Once more, he gives himself to me in the Eucharist. His love, whose invention is unfailing, has made discovery of this strange means of bridging the 2,000 years which divide him from me. In the Eucharist, for me, he returns to this earth. For me, he sacrifices himself. He comes to visit me in person. He, the great physician of Galilee, who lived in the time of Herod and of Pilate. In my heart, behold him. Ineffably he kisses me, clasps me to him. The Eucharist is the daily visit of the Beloved to the soul whom he loves. It would seem that this exhausts every possibility. Jesus, God made man, abiding in my heart, present in my soul. Is not this indeed the union of the soul with Jesus of the Eucharist? For this is no simple embrace of two friends, of two lovers, who remain entirely exterior the one to the other. The embrace of Jesus of the Eucharist and of the loving soul is a different and more profound commingling, a different and closer union. Jesus offers his body to be my bread. He enters into me. In a measure, he incorporates himself with me. Yet not so. Even this cannot satisfy God's insatiable love. In addition to this, He desires the intimate union of two souls, of two lives. He desires that my life and His life shall be mysteriously linked. He desires an identification with Him. He's aware that perfect union, that union such as only a God could desire and such as a mortal is unable to imagine, primarily needs perfect similarity in substance. Infinite beauty and indescribable repulsiveness cannot unite. If He is not vainly to show me His love in countless wondrous ways, He needs to transform me. He needs to elevate me to His own level, to give me a share in His divinity. Already He has done this in allowing me to participate in His divine nature by the special favor of sanctifying grace. He has bathed me in the precious blood of His Son to cleanse and to purify me from the leprosy of sin. He has raised me unbelievably above my condition of mere creature. He has arrayed my soul with a rapturous, undreamed of beauty that makes it commendable in His eyes and wholly worthy of Himself. Yet His desire is not yet satisfied. I am still far from the degree of divinization required for that eternal union that He ordains for me. Daily, therefore, by countless actual graces, He works to make my soul still lovelier, still more worthy of Him, my divine betrothed. Daily, do I but wish it, He visits my soul anew, and at each visit brings me new jewels, gifts of His love. Without intermission, He labors to purify me of all the blemishes of vanity, of all the blotches of foolish self-confidence. The manifold details whose perpetual interweaving makes the fabric of my life are threaded by His loving wisdom, to the end that I may be still further transformed into Him. Consolation and desolations follow one upon the other. By His charms He holds me spellbound. Then He removes Himself from me to increase the desire which I have for Him. Already, it may well be, He has made me pass through the mystical night of the senses, and has willed the greater activity in me of the gifts of His divine Spirit. Shortly, if I be generous, He will demand of me supreme fidelity in the night of the Spirit, that final ordeal which is to render me perfectly like unto Him and worthy of His love. Then at last, He will give me the entry of His love's treasure house. He will give me of the intoxicating drink upon that divine nuptial day, upon that day of transforming union. This is but a poor and crude outline of the marvelous gifts by which infinite love seeks to secure my union with Him and the conquest of my heart. In His gifts, God Himself is present. Yet there is one moving detail that is fittingly considered here. Were He merely a mighty king who wished to give happiness to me, a simple subject, He would bestow upon me His gifts and would then dismiss me from His mind. Yet, as we've seen, His love for us is a unitive love. God knows that in making personal presentation of His gifts, He increases their value. He adds to their power to make our love His own. This is precisely what He does. Take good note of it. From the least of His boons to the notable gifts of the Eucharist and of sanctifying grace, there's not one that does not offer us His presence, that does not include Himself, that does not make gift of Himself. To use Blessed Angela of Foligno's phrase, all nature is full to overbrimming with God. In His essence, in His might, in His ceaseless activity, He is to be found in all things. In all things He labors to nourish me and to add to my spiritual stature, and in particular, to nourish and to increase my love. He is in each grass blade, in each dewdrop. He is in each edible plant, in each delicious fruit, in each fleece from which our cloth is woven. Each floweret is full of him no less than those vast flowers that night brings to blossom in the firmament. Those chairs and tables of which I make use, the paper which preserves my thoughts, the earth upon which I walk, the very air which enables me to breathe, and which my nostrils inhale, all these are full of love. All these bring me nearer to God. All these are full to overbrimming with God, who in them both reveals and conceals himself, and solicits my beggarly heart. It is for this reason that the saints in general so greatly love nature, its flowers, its birds, its beautiful landscapes. To them all things speak of God who is hidden in them, and of God's love. The tenderness of St. Francis of Assisi for his brothers, the birds, is well known. In contemplating the love of God which a flower discovered to him, St. Ignatius was kindled to love. It was when he was seated upon a river bank in an enchanting countryside near Manresa that one day he fell into sublime contemplation. There he received such rich and extraordinary revelation that all the help which he received from God and all the learning which he acquired during his full life of 62 years, had they been made all compact, would not, it seemed to him, have equaled what he received upon this occasion. There will come to mind also St. Paul of the Cross, who walked, consumed with a passion of divine love, across the fields and caressed the wayside flowers, whispering to them, "Be dumb, I can endure no more. I can no longer bear the flame of love which burns me." Would that I too were like the saints, were the eyes of my soul opened wide and lit by the divine light of a loving faith like the saints, I should perceive that the whole world oozed, that the whole world brimmed with love. All about me would breathe sweet fragrance upon me. Love God. Every living thing would mysteriously murmur these words. To me, all would seem like a prayer of the great King, beseeching my heart of me, like a supplication of God, that with infinite sweetness whispered these words, "Behold, I give myself to you. Do you too give yourself to me?" In short, the countless creatures with which I am in contact, the varying events which make my life, would then be so many magnets attracting my heart and seeking to orient every fiber of it towards God, its beloved pole. What unutterable happiness is known, at certain times especially, to a soul illumined by living faith and kindled by love. How the world appears to it divinely instinct with God. And I, how happy too am I, so only I truly love with all my soul. I feel myself bathed in the divine love. I, for whom the mere name of divine love has strange fascination, seem surrounded by love, surrounded by God, whom I love and who loves me. I seem steeped in him. In love's ocean I am like a sponge. Were a sponge able to feel love for water, how joyful it would be to move and have its being in the freedom of a wide ocean. So it is with me, insignificant sponge that I am, lover of God who surrounds me, lover of the infinite ocean of the divine love, whose every wave caresses me, rocks me, whispers murmuringly to me. If I take my wings early in the morning and dwell in uttermost parts of the sea, says the psalmist, even there also shall thy hand lead me. On every hand I am surrounded by God who loves me, who himself desires my heart and my love. In him I breathe, I live, I grow. It is in God himself that we live and move and are. God surrounds me, did we say? God is all around me. Equally, he is in me. All things about me are filled with God. All things in me are instinct with God. In his essence and in his activity, He is in each of my fibers, in each of my nerves, in each drop of my blood. He is himself the miraculous force which enables my heart to beat and palpitate from the day of my birth until the day of my death. He is present still more delightfully in the Eucharist, at the hour of communion. Jesus, God made man, with his human heart, Jesus, the noblest and most perfect of the sons of men, enters into me, bringing with him, by reason of the nature of the Trinity, his Father and his Holy Spirit. Further, to make permanent his special presence in me, with the whole of the Blessed Trinity, through sanctifying grace he dwells in my soul. And there, at the very core of my being, of my faculties and of my will, themselves exalted by the Trinity and having share in its divinity, once more he bestows his love upon me, soliciting my heart by the ceaseless inspirations which he grants me. Oh, the miracles of the love of God! Oh, the unutterable joys which he accords the loving soul that seeks reciprocally to make surrender of itself to him! Oh, the marvels performed by him to detach me from every other love, and to bind me irrevocably to affection to himself! There are marvels that, alas, are only matched by the equally mysterious marvel of my supreme indifference and my supreme insensitiveness. How comes it about that I, humble and poor as I am, have not long been wholly enamored of the great King who wishes me for his own? How can I have allowed myself to be so constantly charmed and seduced by the deceitful attractions of creatures, or of that repulsive lover, the self? Through them he is in a measure revealed. It is unfortunately true that with a soul so bound to the things of the senses, the surpassing charity of God has its weak side. If perpetually he shows me his love, hears me with his favors, pays me visits in person, at each new moment surrounds and instills me with his dear presence, nevertheless he does not make open display to me of his perfections. Did he make this display, in a moment of time he could subjugate my heart by the irresistible fascination of his love that is beyond all my conception. Yet this would not satisfy his love's needs. His desire is for a free man. His desire is for the spontaneous gift of my will and of my heart. For this reason he prefers to have me walk in the twilight of faith. If, however, my faith be firm and full, in all things I'm able to see a sweet image of him. Is not all earth's fleeting beauty a shadow of his own immortal beauty? Human goodness of heart is for me a faint reflection of the divine goodness. Love, whether that of a loving mother or of a faithful spouse, turns my thoughts to the pure source of all love, the excelling love of God. God, the great unseen, at each new moment grants new glimpses of himself. As the sun, hidden behind the clouds, gilds them with its splendid gold, so God's perfections impart to his creatures something of his infinite charm. Every being is some small revelation of himself. Every created perfection is a syllable, or the stroke of a syllable, of his name. Caeli inerant gloriam Dei. The heavens declare the glory of God. For the rest, proportionately as we grow detached from the self to give ourselves to him, the veil which conceals his lovableness becomes thinner and more diaphanous. There are even times when through his mystical graces he lifts a corner of that veil. He vouchsafes us in a measure to be conscious of his presence, and in that consciousness to hear the words, "It is he who is come. The Master is come and calleth for thee." A mysterious voice in the secret depths of our heart permits us to hear his words. He allows his infinite perfections to be glimpsed experimentally in an infused light that induces in us the passive love of contemplation. O Lord, your perfections are indeed beyond contemplation. Your divine love is incomparable and infinitely remote from all human love. Justifiably you can say, "What is there that I ought to do more to my vineyard that I have not done to it?" You have done enough, more than enough, indeed, to make me one with you. Oh, the greatest of God's love! I shall never understand it as I ought. I've been created by God, for God. I am an insignificant soul whom God in His love has created that it may come to love Him, that upon this earth it may be His divine betrothed, that in its earthly exile it may have glimpses of God, that even now it may have a measure of joy in Him in the first place, through the life of spiritual intimacy, and in the second, through the life of union, the while it awaits heaven's eternal union. This is a sublime prospect. This is a prospect well calculated to arouse my enthusiasm, to leave me drunken with love. How often I should ponder upon it, that I may have an increasing conviction of the sublimity of my destiny. If I but come to realize this, however imperfectly, it shall surely not be difficult for me to make my life a life of love for God. In other words, in all the world to love only Him and to love Him in all the things which are. For God is that infinite before which all things dwindle into nothingness. Though for Him, the infinite, I sacrifice all the paltry trifles of this life, should this be for me a heavy sacrifice? Should it not be a pleasure and an exceeding joy? Grant me, O God, your light and your grace. Grant that thus I may have some conception of my divine betrothed, some better conception also of His love. Then every sacrifice, every suffering, every ordeal will seem to me light and sweet, for I shall see it as a mere means to unite me more closely with Him. I too love God with a profound and innate love. As I sadly have to admit, to the unheard of overtures of God, to this unwearied pursuit of my soul by the divine love, I've too often responded only by a strange indifference and a mysterious ingratitude. Of this, the whole of my past life is only too conclusive evidence. What is the reason for this? If I make such poor response to the divine love, can it be that God demands the impossible of me? Can it be that it is incompatible with my nature, insignificant grain of sand as I am, to love Him so infinitely great? Or is it rather that He asks of me something from which my nature shrinks in dread, from which instinctively I turn to flee? Nothing could be further from the truth. On the contrary, He requires me to give rein to this innate love for Him that He has implanted in my secret heart, as in the secret heart of all other men, and that He has quickened in a marvelous fashion by grace. The better to ensure the realization of the plans inspired by His infinite goodness and His loving tenderness on our behalf, in creating us, He has implanted in us an essential and transcendental love for Himself, a secret and intimate love that fills us with trembling ecstasy at His approach, and that before the repeated assaults of His love makes surrender of our soul's citadel. If God, who is infinite perfection, loves us, equally He has created in us a profound and inescapable love for Him, the all-good, the all-blessed, little though we may suspect this. There is no sinner, there is no utterly wicked man, who is not in his secret soul a lover of God. Though he may hate God Himself, no less he loves God's nature. It is in this that the worst misfortune of the sinner lies. He has come to hate Him whom he loves with an innate love. Hell has no greater torment. Damnation has no greater suffering. The damned know an intense hatred of God, of whose hold upon them they are conscious, and whose creatures they know themselves to be. Augustine, that great penitent sinner, has given us his own experience. You have made our heart for yourself, O Lord, and it cannot have peace until it rest in you. Our soul is conscious of little more than its consuming hunger and thirst for God. Its very essence is its intense craving for God. It can find no definition of itself except as a function of Him. Our eager awareness of being, our yearning to be, unite in one great desire of God, the source of all being, the infinite being. Our will and our cravings for goodness know this same desire of God, the infinitely good. It is this hidden hunger and thirst for God, of which we are normally unconscious, that drives us to seek and, if possible, discover in any and every human happiness a crude image of the God whom we lack. It is this hunger and thirst that are the living secret of all our activities upon this earth. Doubtless we are not necessarily aware of this inherent and transcendental love. We all love God, life's supreme good, yet only too often we are ignorant of this. A burning passion of love possesses us, yet in our unconscious pursuit of God, who is the object of our love, we are forever self-deceived. We imagine ourselves to have found the object of our desires in countless creatures that one after the other seem to offer us happiness, and that are no more than the faint reflection, the utterly imperfect image of our beloved. Fascinated and enraptured by a few pale gleams of God that leave these creatures transfigured, in our folly we surrender our heart to these gifts of God, whose sole purpose is to be the heralds of our royal betrothed, to inspire us with yearning for Him, to make us unwearied in our search after Him. Unfortunately, God has one supreme and dangerous rival that from the first awakening of our reasoning sets out to make our love captive. It is the self, the proud, impure, egoistic self, which perpetually solicits our love and which nourishes in our heart, instead of divine love, disastrous self-love. Unhappily, the years of our childhood and of our adolescence are only too surely the setting of its victory and its success. It seems to increase in us with the years, till the day when the soul starts to devote itself to the interior life. This sorry self succeeds only too well in dominating us and in winning all our love. Little by little, it becomes our God and the center of all our activity. A discovery is to be made in regard to this love. In the recognition of this double truth lies all our interior life. God loves my soul, and my soul is made to love God. Let me seek to make discovery of this holy passion that in an unperceived and hidden manner has been consuming me. Let me learn from experience to recognize my beloved. With the aid of graces, consolation, or ordeals, let me come to love God no longer unconsciously and involuntarily, but with the full consciousness of the soul that has recognized its love's object, and that finding this object ideally lovely and lovable has only one desire, has only one thought, to make surrender of itself, to give itself to God utterly and absolutely by breaking all difficulties, despite the bonds which have shackled it to that repellent lover, the self. Let us examine our past, and we shall see what has been our spiritual life hitherto, what has been God's plan in regard to us. Most certainly my childhood and my youth have been infected by love of the self. Most certainly, instead of giving all my heart to God from the beginning, I've surrendered it to those countless things that have attracted it. I've surrendered it to that sorry self, forever self-engrossed even in the most holy things, even in the practice of the holiest virtues. Most certainly I've spent many years in loving this self, in making it the center of the universe, in imagining that all about me was for my own ends, was for the satisfaction, the enjoyment, the glory of this same self. A day came when my soul knew the breath of grace. I perceived how my life, virtuous though it may have been, had been filled with a secret love of the self, and straightway I then turned towards God with a more disinterested love. From that day onward, God has directed all his activity to the end of making me realize his ardent love for me, and that love's desire for union. His innumerable graces have had this end, to make me intimately understand that he loves me, that he greatly desires my love, my holiness, and my perfect union with himself. At the same time, by spiritual ordeals, disenchantments, consolations, he has given me a clear consciousness of that profound and secret love which, like a God-imprinted seal, is in my soul. He has inspired my heart with trembling joy, giving it delightful consciousness of his presence and of the charms of his infinite lovableness. Equally, he has made me experience the sorrow and the agony of his absence. His varied and manifold activity is directed towards making me aware of himself, that experimentally I may know him to be indeed the infinite, the great, the unique good towards which my soul aspires. Slowly, I have come to understand that all this earth's gifts are vanities, that they can bring my soul no satisfaction, that it is made for greater things. At last, he has revealed himself to me as my treasure and my all. Deus meus et omnia. While the fascination of his love was making its conquest of me, he inspired me with scorn of the self. He has brought me to see the malice and repulsiveness of that rival, of that false lover, whose charms are merely deceptive, whose one appeal is that it is mine own, sorry though it be, and true as it is that I have given my life to it in an almost continual kind of idolatry. Now, each day, he continues to detach me from the self. The alternation of consolations and desolations is a powerful means to this end. At each step of my spiritual life, he emphasizes the vivid contrast between his enrapturing beauty and the self's hideous repulsiveness. He gives me relish to the sweetness of his infinite perfections. Equally, he allows me to taste the bitterness of the self's false perfections, to the end that I may make better choice between the two rivals which dispute my love. Then the day will come, if it have not already come, in which he will set before me and slowly bring to pass the incredible exchange. Abandon the self, he will say to me, put away the rags and the sores of your repellent self, look upon it as a stranger and an enemy. In its stead, I offer you my ineffable perfections. Let them be your own possession, your new self. Love and enjoy them as your own. In them find all your happiness, all your glory. Omnia mei tua sunt. All that is mine is yours. Take courage, O my soul, be exultant, let joy enrapture you. I have found the pearl without price, which is worth all this world's treasures. That pearl which is this: the understanding practically that I, this poor and insignificant orphan, this ragged beggar, that I have a royal and divine destiny. I have discovered that heaven's great King loves me with an incomprehensible love, and that he has created me to love him in return. I have come to understand that we are made for one another, that God, the infinitely lovely and the infinitely lovable, in some marvelous way loves the sorry and repellent creature that I am, and that to be more sure of winning my heart, he has instilled in me an instinctive love for himself, an innate and essential predilection, a passion that, though hidden, is ardent and untiring. Now I know that God loves me, and that, though I knew it not, I too have loved him. I know that he works unweariedly to win my heart, to free me from the bonds of my hateful and treacherous lover of former days, and to kill my self-love. Into this he puts all the ardor of his love and all the power of his grace. Open yourself wide, O my soul, to joy and to love, as a flower opens itself to the sun in the spring. Your life is at last made manifest in its true light, as infinitely beautiful, magnificent, irradiated with joy. All things smile upon you. No creature could desire a finer lot than yours. You are made for God, reserved to God, branded with God's seal. You are the happy betrothed, coveted of the King of Kings. Open wide your heart to love. Henceforth, this is your life's one need. Love utterly. Love to the limit of love him whom already you love spontaneously, who is irresistible lovableness, compared with whom for you all else has become repellent. A single stray gleam of whom has upon this earth and among its creatures been sufficient to capture your heart. Love and do what you will. From you God asks no more than this. How sweet and easy it is. So only I give free rein to my inclination to love God. So only to the best of my ability I seek him everywhere. No grievous thing will befall me. If God be my treasure, if the whole of my life be a hunger and a thirst for him, a passionate pursuit of my beloved, so only I aspire to him and desire him, God will be content with me, and nothing will hinder his graces that daily grow greater and more marvelous as they lead me to holiness and perfection of union. All things work together for good to those who love God. Many miseries may be mine, many petty betrayals, stupidities and weaknesses. Desolations and spiritual nights may reveal in their nakedness my soul's hideous sores. This matters not at all. His indulgent love will make my beloved blind to all this, or still better, he will make mysterious use of it to increase my self-hatred and my ardent love for him. The lessons trust teaches us. To understand these great truths, to understand them moreover as the result of grace, even a mystical grace, in a vital experimental fashion, to understand them as a result of all our spiritual life and of God's ceaseless working in us, is automatically to love God surpassingly, is henceforth to behold him as the unique lovableness, the only being that our heart is able to love. This, it is not hard to guess, increases tenfold our joyous and unassailable trust in God's love. This is to establish on the firmest foundation our conviction that as a result of God's ceaseless working within us, we shall finally attain to true holiness. God wills my union with him. The omnipotent King desires with an immense desire to unite himself to this poor beggar that I am. It is his will that upon this earth my life shall be lived in love for him, and that in some measure I shall know the delight of perfect union. Moreover, this immense desire, this insatiable need of God is implanted deep in all the creatures which surround me, and which he has created with this end in view. The whole wide world, the smallest grass blades no less than the firmament's vast suns, all declare to me God's love. From every creature comes the mysterious voice of my beloved saying, "Give me your heart, I desire all your love. I desire to make you one with me, I desire to make you holy." More eloquent than the cry of any created thing, there is the voice of God who is love, incarnate upon earth, that the divine charity may be made visible and palpable to me. For me, too, there is the voice of the cross, with its marvelous preaching of the love of God, which cries to me, "Behold, how I have loved you to the end, to the uttermost end, that I might win your heart and make you holy." For me likewise there is the voice of the white host, in which eternal charity is made love's prisoner, and itself ceaselessly asks that on my side I shall return this love. Lastly, for me, there is the voice, plainer yet it may be, of the Sacred Heart of Jesus, cruelly wounded by our indifference, revealing itself to me surrounded by flames and crying, as once it cried to St. Margaret Mary, "My divine heart is so on fire with love for men, and for you in particular, that unable to contain in itself the flames of its ardent charity, it is compelled to spread them through your agency." After these proofs of love, after these positive protestations of the heart of Jesus, should I not have trust, full to overbrimming, in his omnipotent love? Should I have doubts of his loving wisdom, of his incessant activity to make me holy, of his utter fidelity? Should I trust myself to him only with hesitancy, because in myself I perceive weakness and stupidities, committed times without number? The real need, the real cause of all my cowardice and distrust, is the fact that I have never made thorough examination of these magnificent and consoling truths, or rather, if I have made some cursory examination, that they have not grown sufficiently familiar to me. My need is that my whole life shall become slowly impregnated with the fragrance of these faults. By a prolonged meditation at the hour of prayer, by frequent self-reminders during the day's work, I must accustom myself to the thought that I am perpetually wrapped in God who loves me, and who works for my union and for my holiness. In joys and in ordeals, in consolations and in desolations, I must be continually aware of the encouraging truth that all secondary causes are no more than God's instruments to make me holy, that all which befalls me is no more than a means, a disguised and uncomprehended means, it may be, yet a true means, made use of by God to purify me, to prepare me for spiritual union, and to bring me nearer to himself. When I behold the entire world as the vast theater in which God and I together play out this great drama that is my life, whose every detail is willed and arranged by my beloved, oh, then I shall have discovered true love, and with it true trust. Then nothing shall have the power to prevent my attainment of the oft-dreamed-of ideal. Yet it is important to bear in mind that in this great drama of our life, which ends with the complete conquest of our soul by God, and with our perfect union with him in true holiness, usually there are two outstanding acts. In the first, it is God who pursues our soul, and by means after means seeks to reveal to us his immense love. He detaches our soul from all things. By his charms he holds it captive, making revelation of himself as our treasure and our all. Yet, once the soul is in some degree enamored of its beloved, then the second act begins, and it is now for the soul to pursue God. The better to wound it by the shafts of his divine love, from time to time its beloved seems to flee, and to hold himself remote from it. St. Augustine says, "You seek, O God, the souls who flee you. You seem to flee those who seek you." For this reason, it often befalls that I have no understanding of God's work in me. The ways of God are infinitely removed from man's ways. He leaves me, possibly for no short time, a prey to desolations and to distaste for spiritual things. He takes away from me my ability to pray. Thereupon, I become nearly incapable of spiritual activity. Yet this is no more than the effect of his pure love in active pursuit of my perfection. Possibly he deprives me of a valuable and beloved director at the very juncture when I had the greatest need of him. In the rough path of holiness he robs me of all guidance, desiring himself to be my sole and sure guide, secret and hidden though he be. He goes to the length of making me feel utterly forlorn. I come to imagine myself alone in the search for my holiness, forsaken by Him, and altogether abandoned on account of all my miseries and all my petty betrayals. Beseechingly, I stretch out my hands to Him. In agony, I repeatedly tell Him of my love, but He makes no response, and seems to flee from me. I know every grief known to unhappy love, to love that is forever unrequited by its beloved, so that I come to consider myself the most unfortunate of creatures. When God deals with me in this manner, when, strange to relate, to strengthen my love, He makes me believe that He has no more love for me, and gives me to taste of the bitterness of love's griefs, I must then remind myself that loving me, He longs for me, while His longing is infinitely more loving than mine for Him. It is then that I must remember that God works untiringly to gain all my love, that to kindle my heart He has countless means of which I have no understanding. It is then I must believe in Him and hope against all hope in His faithful love, in that love of which during hours of spiritual intimacy He makes me so delightfully aware. Finally, it is then I must recall His lively protestations of fidelity and the solemn promises to love me forever, which despite my miseries He formerly made, His promises to lead me to holiness. This is the hour for self-surrender, the hour to rest tranquilly, to rest in quiet peace upon the bosom of my God. If dangers fill me with fear, if heights make me giddy, I can do as children do. I can shut my eyes that I may see nothing. I can huddle closer in the arms of God. If I but remain in this assurance and in blind trust within the arms of God, who loves me infinitely more than a mother, nothing can harm me, nothing can trouble the delightful peace of my soul or lead me from my life of self-abandonment. It would greatly profit us from time to time to recall this valuable parallel drawn by Father Crusoe. Our holiness grows rather like those superb tapestries of the finest kind, worked stitch by stitch on the reverse side. The worker engaged upon them sees only the point of his needle, and his successive stitches together make the magnificent figures which are apparent only when every part completed, the pattern is turned to the light, though while the work was actually proceeding, this exquisite beauty was hidden. So indeed it is with our spiritual life and the mysterious work of our holiness, that work which is essentially the work of God, who has outlined its magnificent pattern. We shall not understand it till in heaven God shall indicate that part of the pattern our life has supplied, itself a masterpiece of His love. Upon this earth we have small perception of it. Indeed, in hours of desolation and spiritual tempest we have none at all. At such times the tapestry of our life seems a confused jumble of ill-matched colors. It is at this moment that we need to put from us our poor human reason and to believe in pure and naked faith in the vast and unblemished love of God who loves us. All too many men are then guilty of folly. Instead of keeping their trust wholly intact, at least in their secret soul, they grow agitated, thus counteracting God's action. They struggle like a child who is unwilling to be carried by his mother over the rough parts of the road. So it is with these poor souls whom God would lead to holiness. They make difficult God's hold upon them. They hinder His work and prevent, possibly forever, the fulfillment of His merciful plans. Equally, on the contrary, those souls are happy who, sure of God's love, surrender themselves entirely to Him, and with a blind trust, patiently await the return of the divine favors. They allow God to work as His will dictates. They know that in permitting themselves to be carried by Him, they make far quicker progress than if they walked with their own childlike steps. Docile and amenable to grace, they help on God's work, and though they be little aware of it, they run in the way which leads to spiritual union. Swiftly they go from virtue to virtue, from stage to stage, until high above the clouds and the storms they stand upon the summit, which dazzles with its light and love of true holiness. Have trust, take courage, O my soul, be you also among these souls. From this day forth lay in rich store of trust for those grievous hours during which you will have such great need of it. Hold to your belief in the faithful and omnipotent love of your beloved God. Weak though you may show yourself, He will know how to lead you to perfect union with Him, so long as you do not interpose the one obstacle which He fears, the obstacle of an intractable will or of a wavering trust. So long as you preserve intact the great desire of holiness which He has implanted in you. It cannot be gainsaid that in the drama of love, which is my life, God has a furious opponent in my crafty vanity that seeks to retain my affections. Yet surely this dangerous rival, this sorry self, has already been unmasked. Surely I have at least glimpsed his extreme malice and repulsiveness. Surely I have perceived his yoke to be hateful and oppressive. Surely I have already come to understand that the egoistic and sensual self is my great tyrant, that this vindictive lover makes my state sheer slavery. Surely already I have often stretched out my arms to my true beloved, to the infinite love, that by His very love He may deliver me from these loathsome bonds. Have trust, have trust. Already the battle is half won. To have recognized my enemy, to hate him, to bemoan the concessions that almost involuntarily I yet make him, this is the beginning of final victory. I must have trust in the infinite love which is on my side, and is stronger than I. Towards Him stretch out my arms, urgently beseech His aid. This is above all what I must do to hasten my final deliverance. It is surely no difficult thing. O loving God, it is you who shall exalt me to your love's own level. In the main, my holiness is your work, is far more your work than mine. Your pity for my helplessness is infinite as your hate of mine enemy and your own self-love and its diabolic cunning. So only I count upon you, so only I have trust in you and in none but you, how ready you are to help me. Take courage, O my soul, have trust in Him who can and will do all to satisfy His immense love, and to make you one with Him through all eternity. Chapter 21. Trust in Mary. In the first part, we've seen the nature of true trust, and the manifold reasons which invite us to practice it. In the present part, we have dealt with the different situations in life in which trust is most necessary to us. It remains for us only to show how great should be our trust in Mary, our Mother in Heaven. Subsequently, we will add in the shape of an appendix a chapter upon the precepts and examples which have been given us so notably by St. Therese of the Child Jesus, Trust's great saint, to whom these pages are dedicated. Let us realize that Mary is truly our Mother. It is not difficult to understand that even generous souls fail always to possess the true trust which they should have in this God, infinitely exalted above us, of whose divine perfections they know so little. It is more difficult to understand how men can fail to possess great trust in God made man, in that sweet Savior Jesus, whose marvelous manifestations of love are within the comprehension of the most spiritually battered souls. The most difficult thing of all is to have a boundless trust in our good mother, Mary, Queen of Heaven. A footnote. In describing the divine love, despite oneself, one is compelled to have recourse to analogies drawn from man's humanity, as the reader will have no difficulty in perceiving the ideas developed in this and the following chapter suggest the comparison of a little child. The expressions and the metaphors used are borrowed from the tender and sensitive love of the child for his mother, and from the relations which this love creates between her and him. In applying these to the supernatural order, they must not be interpreted literally. By making them spiritual, they are to be adapted to those realities that are beyond the senses. If this be not done, the risk is incurred of fostering a sentimental spirituality that, far from exalting us to our Mother in heaven, leaves us definitely more remote from her in bringing us down to the lower level of the senses. To continue, it is moreover true that no soul, however fervent, has a perfect trust in Mary. If any had, he, petitioning the Blessed Virgin, would obtain all that he wished. In particular, he would petition her for that holiness which is the greatest of their desires. Souls truly holy would be numerous indeed, for Mary would find great joy in according them a grace that she desires more greatly to give than they desire to receive. Whence comes this strange lack of trust in regard to her who is at once our mother and the Queen of Heaven? Do we doubt her power as a queen? Do we doubt her loving goodness as mother? Is it not the right of children to trust themselves utterly to their dear mother? Alas, not herein lies the prime cause of our lack of trust. We have not a childlike trust in her, for the very simple reason that we are not sufficiently her children, that she is not fully our mother, that we have never completely realized that Mary is and must be our mother. The admission should be frankly made. In one sense, Mary is our mother. In another sense, she is not our mother. Objectively, as we often assure ourselves, she is our mother indeed, but subjectively, alas, she is not our mother. The majority of souls, even of those leading the interior life, have always failed to do more than to realize in part this sweet and comforting truth. Mary is our mother. She is my mother. If we realize this fully, could we spend whole days, as is sometimes the case, not merely without addressing one prayer to her, but even without seeking her out and conversing with her? If we realize this as we ought, could we pass years and possibly our whole life and feel no longing for this mother whom we know to be so loving and whom we have never seen? Should we not have irresistible desires to see and to embrace her? How many times have we experienced that deep suffering known to true children of Mary, caused by the thought that we have never seen our beloved mother and never have taken her into our arms? This suffering is known, has many times been known experimentally on occasion to an intense degree by those children of Mary par excellence, Aloysius Gonzaga, Stanislaus Kostka, Alphonsus Rodriguez, Alphonsus de Liguori, and nearer to our own time, Gemma Calgani. Their desires were so vehement, their exile's grief so poignant, that they drew down Mary from heaven, compelling her to come to them. Mary, in her loving pity, so greatly desired to solace their grief, and herself knew such urgent need to manifest herself to them upon this earth, that she could not deny herself the immense happiness of revealing to them once at least her celestial beauty, of clasping them once at least to her mother's heart. Unhappily, this sorrowful thought of Mary's absence has in all too many cases never touched our spirit. The great grace which Mary alone can give Upon this earth we are all like blind and deaf-mute children. By faith we know that Mary is our mother, that perpetually she wraps us round with her maternal care. Yet we have never gazed upon her radiant beauty. We have never heard the infinite sweetness of her voice. We have never known the soft delight of her maternal caresses. Our days go by, yet, strange as it seems, not once possibly does that fact make us either sigh or weep. We've never known either homesickness for heaven or any ardent desire, any irresistible urge at last to seek out our mother and embrace her for the first time. Imagine a poor orphan, learning suddenly that his mother was still alive, that she whom he had mourned so long as dead was merely lost, and that in a short while he would be in her arms. Would he not know such eagerness that by night he would not sleep, and by day he would pine with the fever of his joy at the thought of once more seeing his beloved mother? Yet not once in our lives, it may be, have our cruel separation and our long exile caused us suffering. If this be the case, it is a sure sign that we are not wholly her children, that we do not live our lives as her true sons and daughters, knowing filial feeling for her, that at last and in brief to us she is not truly a mother, our mother. How great a grace it is to understand that Mary is truly our mother. This is a grace that only privileged souls, those spoilt children of Mary, enjoy. Undoubtedly many souls know that Mary is our mother, yet this by no means implies the full and frank realization of the fact that they are children, and as children of Mary live their lives. Truly, to appreciate this distinction, we must pass through these two stages. Those who have done this, it may be gradually, it may be with startling suddenness through an exceptional grace, often are left marveling at the change worked in their life. In retrospect, it seems to them that formerly they knew nothing of Mary, that Mary meant nothing to them, that they were then without a mother. Now, however, they found their mother in heaven. Now, how utterly this has changed their life, how full it is of Mary. Their lives are forever watched over by her. With her they share all their joys and all their sufferings, all their hopes and all their fears. With every small affair in their lives they run to her with that perfect trust which is the mark of loving children. In brief, Mary is truly for them all that a mother is for her child. Therese of the child Jesus, who by her simple and childlike love had such charm for her heavenly mother, truly became the child of Mary. To her sister Celine she wrote, "On the subject of the Blessed Virgin, I must tell you of one of the simple reflections which delight me. Sometimes I catch myself saying to her, 'I believe, my beloved mother, that I am happier than you. I have you for mother, and unlike you, I have a Blessed Virgin to love. You are, it is true, the mother of Jesus, yet you have given him to me, while by him upon the cross you have been given to us to be our mother. Therefore, we are richer than you. Of old, in your humility, you wished to become the little handmaid of God's mother, while I, insignificant that I am yet not your servant, but your child. You are the mother of Jesus, and you are my mother. Would that we had but part of this glowing faith, of this ardent yet delicate love for Mary, that ourselves we might realize in some measure that Mary is in actual fact our mother, and that she is better than any earthly mother. Yet in this is implicit a great grace, a grace that Mary alone can accord us. Our repeated meditations can prepare our soul for it. Our sacrifices, our generosity, our frequent recourse to Mary, above all, our loving aspirations can hasten its happy beginning. Yet in the end, we need that Mary, listening to our ardent supplications, shall give us her own powerful aid. It is our need that she shall make her nearness and presence so real to us that she should figure so intimately in our life, that at certain hours she should give us so sweet a consciousness of her love, that at last we should make ours the enduring conviction that Mary is our mother, and as our mother lives her life. Only then shall we become her children and live as her children. A footnote. To effect this, Mary has the most varied means. In securing every kind of grace for us, she can singularly strengthen our faith and increase the ardor of our love. Equally, she can obtain for us an increase of the gift of piety. Finally, there are times when she avails herself of graces of the mystical order. To continue, O Mary, I too ask this favor of you. I am your small beloved child. Jesus has given you to me as my mother. Is it not your will that your little child shall know you? Is it not your will to reveal yourself to him that he may love you fervently? I am aware that this is indeed a particular favor, a special grace, yet it is a grace that your mother's heart finds sweet to grant. It matters little that to secure it I need to beseech you again and again, to give you countless evidences of my love, to be persevering and persistent in my prayer. For I too, am determined upon this earth to have a mother in heaven, who shall be my mother indeed. Having a mother, having such a mother, no longer can I wish to live like a poor little orphan. O Mary, you surely cannot refuse me this grace, immense though it be, unworthy though I am. You have allowed me to realize my spiritual state, to understand that it comes of a grace that I had not suspected. Now that I have discovered my utter indigence, I can no longer live thus. O Mary, reveal yourself to me. Come down to me to be for me also, as for so many others, a true mother, to be my mother. Reveal your countenance to me, O Mary. Let your voice resound in my ears. Your voice is as infinitely sweet as your countenance is comely. Jesus has made his mother both lovable and perfect. When we have realized that Mary is our mother, we have in a measure come near to realizing also her ineffable perfections and lovableness, no less than her immense love for us. The faith tells us that Mary is Mother of God and Mother of men. As Mother of God, she is seen by us as utterly perfect. No reflection is needed to convince us that she, whom God has exalted in rank above all creatures of his choice of her for mother, has been endowed above all others with every gift of nature and of grace. Jesus, our Savior, owed it to his wisdom, to his goodness, and above all to his filial love, to make Mary so lovely and so lovable that the very seraphim should know ecstasy in their admiration. So it is that in heaven, in contrast with the dazzling sun of justice and of holiness which is Jesus, Mary appears to us as the incomparable moon, which sweetly and perfectly reflects the rays of the divine sun, Jesus himself. Compared with her, both angelic purity and the most marvelous holiness are mere faint flickers of light, the stars which are honored in being her galaxy. Mary is the mother of Jesus. Accordingly, his need was to make her so beautiful, so pure, so holy, so enrapturing, that he who is infinite holiness and infinite beauty could know perfect pleasure during his days at Nazareth, no less than during heaven's eternity. For him, she was destined to be a garden of delight, a source of ineffable happiness. Because of this, he had to make her so that there was nothing in her which he could regret, so that his immense love in regard to her could dream of nothing more lovely, so that this infinite wisdom should be truly charmed and wholly satisfied in contemplating all her lovableness. She needed to be so ideally pure and beautiful, so exquisite, so celestial, that even He, the infinite source of all being, as of all beauty, should be able to give her all the esteem and all the love which a perfect son owes his mother. How rapturously beautiful He had to make her, that He too, even He, could say, like the bride in the Canticle of Canticles, "You are altogether beautiful, even my divine eyes can find no blemish in you." It would profit men much to meditate more often upon Mary's ineffable perfections. I contemplate her often in the mysteries of her life. I admire her greatness, and I marvel much at her privileges. Nevertheless, too often I fail to appreciate and to relish the exquisite beauty and the enrapturing perfection of Mary. What an immense loss this is to me! Mary is so delightfully beautiful that even Jesus, who is infinite beauty, knows eternal delight in contemplating her. Ought she not to be an object of admiration for me also, making for my supreme happiness? Poets and artists spend hours in contemplating nature. They grow intoxicated with poetry and with beauty, losing themselves in long reveries before the harmonies of this earth or of the starry universe. Yet I, Mary's child, cannot spend a few moments in knowing ecstasy at sight of this masterpiece of God's power and His wisdom, which is Mary. This masterpiece that in itself surpasses all the world's man's eye may see. It is only too likely, alas, that until this very day I have not spent a single hour in becoming intoxicated with happiness and with love by admiring my dear mother in heaven. I would then implore her to help me. I would beseech her to charm me also, as she has charmed so many others. If it be her will, she can allow me to glimpse her celestial beauty. In itself, this will be sufficient to leave my heart drunken with love and with happiness. Then I too, like every true child of Mary, shall be able to say with ecstasy, "Who is she who comes forward as bright as the sun, as beautiful as Jerusalem?" O Mary, Mother of God and Mother of my soul, you are full of delights. You are as the fragrant breath of God's nostrils. Like so many more, I will cry with transports of ineffable love. Mary is ineffably lovely. She is lovable far above all that I could conceive or dream or desire. The happiness which comes of contemplating Mary's lovabilities. Were I truly to love Mary with all my soul, only to think of her, the mere sight of whom, indescribably lovely, holy and perfect as she is, enraptures me, would that not in itself be supreme happiness? Truly this opens before me a surpassing happiness, a great depth of secret joy, into which I can plunge deep, in which I can lose myself, and in which I can drown my miseries in my pernicious self. Mary, my cherished mother, my mother loved better than I love myself, I see her with the eyes of faith. I am aware of her close to me, joyous, delightful, and perfect, realizing, and more than realizing, all my most ardent desires. What happiness may surpass this? True happiness is surely no other than a man's perception of the fulfillment of his desires, such happiness increasing proportionately as our desires are more fervent and more perfectly realized. This admitted, when I contemplate Mary, could my dreams conceive anything excelling her? Are not all my desires satisfied and more than satisfied? I behold my mother, whom I love and whom I would love as upon this earth never yet a child loved his mother. I behold her shining radiant and delightful, without shadow of imperfection. I am aware of her close to me. I see her ineffably holy, ineffably pure, incomprehensibly loved and loving. Transfigured by that pure felicity which is at once the cause of her love for God and for Jesus, and of the love of God and of Jesus for her, of her who through all eternity knows ecstasy at the sight of God. All these things Mary is to a degree of which only an imperfect idea can enter my conception. Further and above all, she is these things, she and not I. Here is uttermost happiness. Here is a foretaste of man's life in heaven. Myself to be all these things in God's sight would be unspeakable joy. How much more so when it is she and not I. She, my most cherished mother in heaven, whom I love so much more than I love myself. This is infinitely to be preferred. The utter truth of this is now at last plain to me. Truly, Mary, your beauty and your felicity carry me on to perfect happiness. Let us often beseech our Mother for the ability to know from time to time these transports of joy, this intoxication of soul, which a mere drop of her celestial happiness has made to overbrim, and which avails to make us forget utterly all the created world, and in particular ourselves. Let us implore it also of Jesus, for this intimate happiness, this lively joyousness of soul, which is of the essence of his lovable celestial mother, is no other thing than the joy of Jesus himself quick within us. It is he who, living and active in the soul, enraptures it with happiness and with love. To the soul he lends his eyes and his heart. He gives it glimpses of Mary as he sees her himself. He allows it to love Mary a little as he loves her himself. He instills into it his own love. It is surely no amazing thing that in consequence the soul experiences a truly celestial felicity. Equally, Jesus has made Mary infinitely loving. Mary is our mother. She is the most lovable of mothers. She is also, and this is the supremely important thing in regard to our trust, the most loving of mothers. We all know the simple fact. We've all given expression to it more than once. Yet this is far from meaning that we have even a limited understanding of our Heavenly Mother's love, or even some small penetration of the mysterious depths of that ocean of love, which is her heart. First and above all, it is but possible for us to penetrate this heart of hers and to make some possible guess at its divine beauties. At first it would seem that the heart of our Divine Mother must be a garden closed to our profane regard, to which God alone has entry. Even upon this earth we rarely succeed in penetrating to the depth of great hearts. The words, gestures, and actions of those who were great among us have only imperfectly revealed the essential qualities, the delicate and varied feelings which possess their hearts. How then shall we know the heart of our Mother in heaven, of her who was after our Savior Jesus without doubt the masterpiece of God's omnipotence, of her whom God has made incomparably more lovely and more loving than the love-flaming seraphim? Nevertheless, thanks to God, theoretically at least, we can know the heart of Mary better than we have known any heart before. We need merely think of what Mary must be to have become our mother and the mother of the human race, and automatically we are able to estimate the grandeur of her love and to know what she has been in very fact. With utter certainty, we can say that Mary has been, that Mary is, all that she must be to be perfectly the mother of the entire human race. Consistently, God gives to those whom he exalts to high place, and to whom he entrusts special missions, all graces in the measure requisite for the accomplishment of his end. When he ordained that Mary should be the mother of the human race, God automatically endowed her with all the surpassing perfection which this mission demands. For a moment, endeavor to plumb the depths of maternal virtue, and in particular of maternal love, that this implies. To be the mother of each of these myriad beings that follow one another upon this earth, and to be that mother perfectly, to each of them, to be all that a mother should be to her children. Among men, how rarely is a mother encountered who is ideal for each of her children. A mother's love must, by its very nature, be so full of solicitude for each of her children, must be so intense, so profound, that in a large family, though the mother be the best of mothers, her heart is too often not big enough, not loving enough, to include them all in an equal and large-hearted affection. One is tempted to say that a mother's love, however great and fervent it may be, is quickly spent, even when the children are few. Could any mother be of herself the mother of the whole human race, the mother of a myriad men? Is it conceivable? If it be, it would require a human heart that of itself, in its immensity, in its watchful tenderness, in loving ingenuity, in unwearied devotion, shall be equal to all the hearts of all earth's mothers. Plainly, this is impossible. And yet, the all-wisdom and the all-power of God have brought this miraculous thing to pass. He has made Mary as great, as mighty, as loving as it is necessary for her to be, perfectly, ideally to be, the mother of each of these innumerable human creatures. To have for each of all these men, whose natures are so different, whose needs are so varied, whose miseries are so great, and whose aspirations are so manifold, to have for each of them all the watchful solicitude, all the exquisite tenderness, all the profound compassion, all the inexhaustible love that she needs who is to be at once the mother of each and of all. In theory our minds can conceive and our lips can express this, yet never, even for a moment of time, can our imaginations grasp it. We can dream of this indefinitely. We can pass our whole life in gazing at and seeking to measure this abysmal love of our mother. We shall never understand the full meaning of these words at once so simple and so sublime. God has made the heart of Mary all that it must be for her to become the perfect mother to all humanity. What joy to think of this! What a welcome message of consolation and of joy such a truth conveys to me. To think that all the immense love which fills Mary's heart, and which is sufficient to love the whole world perfectly, to think that all this love is poured out on my miseries, that it is so wholly directed towards me, that it is vigilant over me, and ceaselessly active on my behalf. To think that this ideal mother, whom God has made and whose love surpasses the combined love of all earth's mothers, is perpetually concerned with me, that in some mysterious way I am, though I know it not, the object of her continual solicitude, that her affection enfolds me in a vast net of maternal attentions, that in effect she loves me as though I were the world's one living creature. Almost certainly I've never thought of this. As certainly I have never plumbed as I need to do this mysterious and sublime reality, this reality well calculated to give me a glimpse of heavenly things, well calculated to relegate to my life's background the foolish trifles of this world, and to bring prominently into the full light of its foreground the marvelous realities of the supernatural world. To ponder these great truths often, and to seek to penetrate them, is profitable indeed. Yet, let it be said once more, we must beware of illusion. Mary, our Heavenly Mother, alone can give us a true and deep conviction, an intimate knowledge of her maternal love for us. She alone can, if we be generous, if we urgently beseech her, make us relish and appreciate in their full exquisiteness her perfections as mother. She has revealed these perfections to all her privileged children upon whom she has conferred the happiness of the realization that she is their mother. Like a loving mother, she envelops them with such care. She stoops over them so tenderly. She heaps them with such countless caresses. From time to time she clasps them fervently to her burning heart, that in a measure they know experimentally and appreciate intimately what no effort of imagination could bring them to understand. How happy are such souls! In this earthly exile, a celestial mother is theirs. This is equivalent to saying that for them this exile is but half an exile. Upon this earth they possess one of the greatest joys which heaven has in reserve for us. They've made discovery of their Mother Mary. Already, in a measure, they possess her, and at times have of her ineffable joy. To such souls, in a marvelous and mysterious manner, unsuspected of others, Mary makes discovery of herself. In the midst of this world and the night of its faith, gleams of light are theirs. They reveal to them glimpses of heaven's splendor and of the enrapturing perfections of Mary. Unhappily, these realities are too exalted, too transcendental to be expressed, however inadequately, in our poor human tongue. The saints themselves have been unable to set down in words for us the sublime marvels which Mary's heart has revealed to them. At the most, from time to time, surprised in the midst of their ecstasies, they have unconsciously disclosed by words as faltering as they are sublime, and in accents as warm as they are vibrant, the flame of love which the sight of their heavenly mother and of her infinite lovableness has lit in them. The life of self-abandonment lived by true children of Mary, their happiness, and their instinctive trust. Normally, we have no difficulty in understanding that Mary, Mother of God and Queen of Heaven, is all-powerful, that she has command of all the might of God, and that she is the almoner of all graces, that in consequence she can help us in all our needs, whatever they be. This aspect of trust is not usually overlooked. Our need is rather to realize that it is Mary who wishes to succor us, that she desires this with an immense desire, that because she is truly our mother, she has a truly compassionate love for us, that she is the most perfect and the most loving of mothers, and that her supernatural, supermaternal love, surpassing the combined love of all earth's mothers, is poured out in its fullness upon each of us. When once this is realized, the heart opens wide to self-abandonment. A wide breach is made in our own skepticism, and the waves surge into our soul, flooding it with a blind, immense, absorbing trust that nothing may overthrow. Its mother thus found, the soul begins to live a new and unfamiliar life, a life lost in Mary. It is that life, simple, delightful, infinitely enviable, that is lived by all small children. In the midst of this hurly-burly world, it brings serene and tranquil peace. For in possessing his mother, the child possesses all. He lacks nothing. Neither need, nor fear, nor the fever of desire can touch him. He seems to ignore the exterior world, to be a stranger to it. The sweet bosom of his mother alone is known to him. Truly, for her cherished child, a mother is all. She is his joy, his love, his security, his life. How much more does Mary, the ideal mother, fulfill all these things? For the soul which abandons itself to her like a little child, she is indeed perfection. With utter truth, she can say to this cherished being, surrounded by a child's purity, "My beloved child is all to me, and I am all to him." That soul is happy which lives and breathes upon Mary's bosom, and forever takes its rest upon her heart, knowing sweet trust the while. Its needs may be varied and many, its miseries may be grievous indeed, this matters little. It possesses Mary, its heavenly mother. For it, this is everything. Suffering threatens it. What shall it do? What does a child do who, trying to walk, tumbles and bruises himself? He cries to his mother. He holds out his arms to her. At once his mother bends lovingly over him, clasps him to her bosom, kisses the tiny hand which bears the bruise, and with this mere kiss heals his hurt. So does that child which is Mary's child. In life's ways it has stumbled, it has fallen, it has bruised itself. Some physical suffering threatens either it or those that it loves. Some moral difficulty, the loss of one dear to it, some failure or ingratitude has affected it. Contradictions and calumnies beset and wound it. What does it do? Beseechingly, it stretches out its arms to Mary, who is forever either present or near to it, and Mary bends over that soul, kissing its bruise. If to heal be salutary, she heals its physical sickness or its moral grief. If it be not, she anoints the wound with that fragrant oil of holy love, which enables it to find delight in sufferings willed by God. From time to time, such a soul chances to fall into some infidelity, into some fault, into no grave fault, it is probable, for the watchful love of Mary would not permit it. What is it to do? Shall it sulk or rave or whimper? Or shall it, perceiving its own imperfection, begin to doubt Mary's love? By no means. The child who has been guilty of some fault is well aware that his mother's love is constant. Instinctively, he runs to cast himself into his mother's arms and to have her caress him tenderly. His trust in her love is quickly proved. The soul often experiences this ardent desire or that. At all costs it would obtain a particular favor of Mary. How shall it set about this? Once more it will do as all small children do. It will go to Mary. Lavishly it will heap its childish tenderness upon her, telling her in all simplicity of its desire. From her, the childlike candor of its love has secured the object of its petition in advance. It is sure that its request will be granted in exact accordance with its desires, or in a measure of which its desires do not dream, great though the grace may be that is besought by it. For the soul knows that its mother is all-powerful, and desires nothing so much as to make her happy. At certain times, the soul feels melancholy fall upon it like a mist. That it may give great pleasure to Jesus and to Mary, its intense yearning is to resemble them perfectly. As they, it would be sweet, humble, lowly, self-forgetful, and loving. Alas, it falls far short of this, far short of its ideal. Day by day it perceives itself still more remote and removed, still more dissimilar, it would seem, from Jesus and from Mary. For with each day's increasing knowledge of the lovableness of Jesus and of Mary, increasingly it knows, too, of its own miseries. There are times when at sight of them its heart bleeds cruelly. Will it ever come to give Jesus that perfect pleasure for which he has so intense a desire? Thereupon, like a child, it goes to show its hurt to its beloved mother in heaven. The soul uncovers its wounds, its bruises for her to see. To her it discovers its ills. Into her maternal heart it pours out its griefs and its aspirations. Mary quickly comforts it, making it understand that all things run their course, and that even our miseries serve our holiness. At the same time, she fills her child's heart with new graces of love to lead it on to virtue. Thus, in all its needs and in all its afflictions, a soul that is to become a child of Mary, and that lives a life truly Mary-like, turns instinctively towards its mother. In Mary, it lives and breathes. To it, Mary has become as necessary as the air which it breathes. In her, it finds all things. There's always with it an intuitive sense that for it, its mother is all in all. It has boundless trust, and by this trust, it is never betrayed. It does not follow from this that it arrives at its trust by reason, but at every opportunity it seeks to buttress it by new arguments for hope. Its trust is wholly spontaneous, all but instinctive. Its intuitive nature is a mark of love. Because it is truly a child of Mary, God grants it the gifts which He makes to all His children, and in particular to those who live a life of spiritual childhood, that gift of ardent and essentially trusting love for its mother. To it He has abundantly given the precious gift of the Holy Ghost, that gift of filial piety, which makes it altogether amenable to the suggestions of such filial love. The trust of Mary's children is justified. A child of Mary, we repeat, seldom or never arrives at this trust by reasoning. It is no bad thing, however, for us to pause a moment, and, using our reason, to discover how truly wise is this blind and instinctive trust. Unconsciously, it is based upon excellent reasons, in which there is no possibility of mistake. If in some small measure we've understood that Mary is truly our mother, and that she is the most sympathetic, the most compassionate, the most loving of all mothers, straightway and without difficulty we shall perceive that the soul is wholly right when it abandons itself to Mary with perfect trust and confidently expects of her all things that it desires. Is it conceivable that they can be really indigent who have for their loving mother the Queen of Heaven, or that they can be weak and helpless whose mother is ruler of the wide universe? Or lastly, that they need despair of achieving saintliness or of inspiring holy vocations, whose mother is the supreme dispenser of every grace? Truly, the childlike soul which trusts itself blindly to its heavenly mother is right indeed. By special grace it is forever aware, though it may not suspect this, that Mary will not allow herself to be surpassed in tenderness, in generosity, or in love by any earthly mother. The mind can scarcely conceive a mother who at once loving and rich allowed her child to suffer from hunger and thirst, being in no way anxious at a sickness that caused it cruel suffering, and showing indifference to its sorrows and its griefs. For this would seem a contradiction in terms. If this be true, even in the case of this earth's imperfect mothers, is there a single human misery that leaves Mary's heart unmoved, and that fails to secure her help, if only the soul in question has trust? Our own sickness, or that of our relatives, poverty, destitution, disappointed affection, persecution and calumny, the ingratitude and desertion of friends, failure and even a material enterprise, all these things touch the loving heart of our Heavenly Mother far more than they can move the heart of any mother upon this earth. Further, if our trust in Mary be complete, there will be no question of her help failing us. She will deliver us from our misfortunes, or if it chance that God's plan is otherwise, and that suffering brings us greater benefit, she will give us that courage and that love of the cross, which will render these sufferings sweet for us, and will make them our rich storehouse of spiritual benefits. Again and above all, let us give special attention to those moral miseries, regrettable lapses, it may be, of those who are dear to us, sins into which we ourselves may fall, and in the case of fervent souls, those stupidities, those inconsistencies, those acts of petty cowardice, those manifestations of vanity of which we are guilty, and which check our spiritual progress. Further, there are in their infinite variety those interior ordeals known as spiritual sterility and abandonment, desolations, grievous temptations, sorrowful mystical nights, and finally, for apostles of Jesus and of Mary, difficulties in their apostolate, actual failures, the resistance of souls stubborn against grace. All these miseries, whether real or apparent, all these causes of the soul's secret suffering, find swift, clear echo in our mother's heart, and are the object of her ceaseless solicitude. Her love for us is the more merciful and the more compassionate in that she knows perfectly that in the spiritual life above all, we are as small children who depend wholly upon their mother. If the latter failed to suckle her child or suckled it insufficiently, if she had little or no solicitude for it, how would it live and grow in strength? Equally, we too, utterly dependent upon our Mother Mary, whom Jesus has chosen as dispenser of all his graces. Without her, we should neither live nor grow in the divine love. We may be unaware of this, yet it is true. No grace of prayer or of contemplation, no inclination towards goodness, no strength with which to practice virtue, no spiritual consolation is ours except at her blessed hands. Let us further reflect upon that most especial reason why Mary's love is an utterly compassionate love. It is this: her heart and her love have been shaped by sorrow. During the whole of her life upon earth, above all when she stood at the foot of the cross, Mary's soul was pierced and wounded by that sorrowful sword, her compassion for the being most dear to her. None has known as she has known that torture of martyrdom which compassion for her agonizing Son inflicted upon her. There could be no more moving reason than this why Mary's love is a profoundly compassionate love. Were the Virgin herself not our mother, she, the Queen of Martyrs, would indeed be the ideal soul to which we could confide all our sufferings and all our needs.